We'll get Chris to do the intro for you.
Awesome. All right, welcome back, everyone. Next up, we have Alex Argeris. Yeah, should be a good talk.
Is my mic on? Yeah? Everyone can hear me well? Perfect. Are we waiting for a couple of other folks? They're all going to miss my talk, I guess, huh? Anyway, so hi, everyone. My name is Alexandre Argeris. I'm one of the few cybersecurity technical solution architect at Cisco, but my talk is not going to be a sales pitch. Okay, so we're going to talk about other stuff than usually what I talk when I'm in front of a customer. So thanks to the team again, and this year, for those of you who have been at many other BSides for the last couple of years, BSides used to be always the same week as my wife's birthday. And I was always in a rush, either to arrive or to leave the BSides, just to be there for her birthday. But this year, it was over the weekend, so I was just happy. So we did arrive on Monday. I had a couple of minutes to go on Signal Hill, do my jogging run. And yesterday, we even had the pleasure to go around as well, a couple of other sites with one of my colleagues over there to see the beautiful area, of course. So today, we're going to talk about something that is pretty close to my heart. If you remember, if you have been to other of my talk, I usually talk about stuff that are free, cool, anyway, stuff like that. So you can have fun in your own lab as well and implement those type of strategy as well within your organization if you're willing to, or even apply the same strategy to commercial product, like the one that I sell. So for today, we're going to try to see how we can enrich your experience when you're using an XDR technology with free API services. I mean free because these are not open source like we used to call software and stuff like that. These are most of the time services that offer a free tier to access stuff that are lower than what you can get if you pay the extra money for it. But anyway, even if they are free, most of the time you can get a lot of information from those services to enrich your experience while using a technology like an XDR technology in a sense. Make sense? Just a little bit about myself. I've been presenting at BSides for many, many years. I think the first year was in 2015. I've been talking about many different topics, SSL decryption, honeypots. I even have shared some of my story when I was younger as well, stuff that I should have not done and stuff like that. So a bit about myself. I probably had my first computer in early age. And I also one that I was able to access Gopher. How many of you know Gopher? Nice, nice. So it was a nice way for me to be introduced into the networking / whatever other industry, able to surf the CLI of the Gopher across the world and stuff like that. So I started to code like an amateur or whatever, as I say, most of the time around the 90s as well, by building my own web page. How many of you have been building their own web page as well? It was awful. Anyway, and I have more than 25 years of experience, whatever. I've been with Cisco for the last 10 years. I have 3 kids. Thanks God they are all at high school now. And I have a wonderful wife as well. If you're looking for me during winter, I usually ski over the weekend. Even on holiday and all that, every time that I can, I go on the ski hill. And during summer, if you want to do an activity with me, call me and ask me to go on the road bike. Okay, make sense? So a little bit of warning here. First of all, that presentation, typically the presentation that I do over here, it's make sure that you guys go away from that presentation, not with content. My goal is always to make you think. right? Make sure that you have some sort of a experience that will leave you with something that will encourage you to go deeper into that research, okay? Of course, please ask questions, but I will say more, add comment, right? I'm not an expert. I'm a generalist, like probably most of you guys as well. So if you think that what I'm saying in front of you does not make sense, raise your hand and say, Alex, you're wrong, okay? And it's going to be too boring as well if you don't ask questions. I do have pigs. Remember, for the one of you who were there last year, I do have a bunch of pigs over here as well. So for each comment, question as well, or whatever, where I want, I'm going to send a pig as well. Okay? So first of all, let's ask our friends, ChatGPT, what XDR is. Are you guys ready? How many of you are familiar with the marketing, whatever terminology of XDR? Yeah, oh, that's the first hand. Whoa, almost. So if we ask ChatGPT, it's a good definition, I would say. It said extended detection and response. Okay, so it means we extend the detection of what we used to include multiple different telemetry. Not only one single telemetry that usually all the other tools are providing, but we extend that telemetry as well, that visibility, to over other tools as well. The primary objective, I really like having that slide over there as well. So the primary objective is to provide visibility and context. So here's the important word over here, context. So my talk is all about adding additional context to an investigation, okay? And by analyzing data, whatever, with advanced analytics, we're not going to go there today. Machine learning, of course, we all do that. And at one point, there's other things that ChatGPT are telling us. It will leverage or do detection and response. Response and other keywords here, very important. So we're going to look at some services, tools, or whatever that we can leverage as well to do response to a potential threat. The other thing is automate response, right? Being in front of the computer or a tool, it doesn't make sense. No one wants to have a dedicated, hi, Kathy, how are you? So no one wants to be in front of the computer or the logs or whatever 24/7, right? We want to be able to automate as well those response. And the other part as well is threat intelligence. So typically there's a bunch, and if you have money, you can spend a lot of money on threat feed. Right? There's a bunch of different organizations across the world that will give you a lot of information, like the dark web stuff as well, to be able to correlate, add additional context to investigation as well. But today, we're going to look at free stuff. So there's commercial market, the big commercial market for that XDR stuff. Everyone has their own flavor of what XDR could be. Of course, if you have money in your organization, go ahead and buy those solutions. It's going to be a lot easier for you, of course. But if you want to play and have fun, there's some other as well. So those are open source, whatever, free service or free, not service, but free tools that can be leveraged to accomplish something similar to an XDR technology. Of course, on the other end, there's Python, PowerShell, any other tools that do scripting and stuff like that can be leveraged as well, right, to do the response, add additional context to an investigation, and so on and so forth. So if you don't have money, or if you want to have fun, go on that side, right? and make sure to prove to your organization that adding additional context with free tool and free services as well makes sense to you to protect your organization, and then maybe you're going to get money to buy additional stuff. So now let's talk about API. So that's the second portion of my talk, API. So how many of you remember my talk last year? Yeah, there you go. Nice. So what was the first challenge of API? Oh, that's a good one, huh? Authentication. You guys remember, we all have MFA right now applied to most of the account that all we all own, right? But we don't have an MFA solution for an API, right? Typically, we have a set of API key, or we use a token, and unfortunately, we never refresh or change our API key, right? It should be a best practice to do it, but we don't do it. Anyway, so for today, where we're going to go with API, it's by leveraging free services. So some of those ones does not require authentication, so we don't care. And some other as well, just leverage your API key from a free services, so you don't care as well if those API key are shared. So let's ask ChatGPT again. It's application programmability or programming, my French accent is coming back, interface here. And then what's API is, I will say that API is the best way to communicate, to have two machines communicate together, right? That's probably the best way to interpret what API is. And essentially, API will leverage what we have already. It's HTTP protocol, most of the time. REST API use HTTP. So here's a cool API example. So this one is pretty nice. Predict the age of a name. Right? Is it useful? Not really, but it's cool, right? And if you look at it, it predicts that my name, Alexandre, has 46 years old. I will be 46 in 3 months from now. So they're pretty good, right? So you can go and Google your own or look for your own name as well, see if it's true or not. But whatever, is that could be applicable to any of your threat detection? It could be, right? Let's say you have a use case where you want to define, I don't know, it's a phishing use case or playbook or whatever, and then you want to identify if the name or the mini name that could be in that email could be applicable to the typical age of your employees or stuff like that. So you can leverage that, of course. It's free. You're not going to do it by yourself. You're going to have to copy and paste the result. It's going to be built into the solution if you go up to what my talk is about. So if you look at REST API and what REST API is in general, how many of you guys are familiar with REST API? Oh, nice. Here you go. So I like to play with REST API. Am I an expert? No, but I like to. So there's multiple different functions within the REST API that is pretty important to understand. The first one is get. Please get me Mr. Service, get me something, right? Get me what you have on a pet name in that type of example. It could be on anything else as well. The other one is put, right? Please update the date you have for that person, stuff like that. Delete, of course. Please delete that IP. Please delete that address or whatever, or that record, right? And post. Can you please upload the file, or can you please add the record to your database and stuff like that? That's going to be pretty important for the rest of the presentation here. So let's look at what's going to be the framework for today's presentation. So we do have XDR on one hand on the top and API at the bottom. So the first important thing when we're talking about API is how do we collect telemetry. Telemetry could be anything from firewall logs to an EDR logs, NDR, cloud, any type of services, identity services, and so on and so forth, right? Could be even from an OS or whatever. Things that matter to you that could be used to identify a potential incident, right? And of course, some of those technology, I would say most of them right now, are exchanging that type of telemetry with an XDR platform through API, okay? We still leverage pretty old technology like, I guess, syslog, right? Which could be non-encrypted, but sometimes it's encrypted now as well, right? But syslog is still used, unfortunately. And then the second part is how do we correlate and prioritize all these different incidents, right? I don't want to give to my security analysts all these different security incidents at once, right? I want to make sure that they are looking at the one that matters to them. And to be able to do that, typically, I will reach out to an API service or to a threat intelligence services, right? Maybe within that incident, there's an IP, there's a domain name, there's a hash from a file, a URL, or a name, or a MAC address, or whatever other stuff as well. So I'm trying to reach out to a service that will give me more insight, more information about it, so I can correlate, prioritize, add a score, or whatever other stuff as well. So I can say, you know what, mister, you should look at this one and not those one. Then the investigation part, right? Everyone needs to go into the investigation part. So from the investigation standpoint, first of all, we're still going to need to query those threat intelligence, right? Can you give me the reputation of that hash? When that hash was first seen, right? Is there any tag associated with that hash? I mean, signature from a specific malware, campaign, and stuff like that. And also, we're going to reach out using API to the original source. Can you give me the context? Is there a user tied to that MAC address? Is there a user tied to that public IP? Right? And so on and so forth. And then the response, which is the fun part. Right? How do we mitigate, control, whatever, isolate a potential threat? Right? And here's the difference. From now on, we will use additional HTTP or REST API function, like the update, the post, and the delete as well, because we're in the response phase, right? So we can go and add additional context to our source, right? Let's say it's the entity provider, it's Azure AD, right? I'm going to put name here. You're using Azure AD, so as a response, I'm going to just deactivate the user, right, in Azure AD. So it's probably going to be something like a push or something like that. I'm going to go in threat intelligence as well. I'm going to show you how to contribute to the community, okay, by adding comments on different platforms about a potential threat that you have found out, right? Instead of just getting information from others, you can contribute as well to the community. And then there's other stuff as well, external and internal source. You may reach out to your CMDB or whatever other management platform and stuff like that for your host or whatever. So there's other places as well that you may want to delete asset and stuff like that to isolate the problem. So there's many, many different collection of free API. So that's one I really like, Rapid API. So there's a bunch of different API that you can look at it. Some of them are free, some of them are free to use, some of them are you have to pay for it as well. And it's not only for security, right? There's API for jokes. There's API for weather. There's API for anything, right? But I'm making jokes here about those different type of API. But if you're in an investigation, it may be very cool to add some of those information, some of that context as well, right, within the information ticket or the investigation ticket. Any questions so far? Comments? No? Okay. Fine. Yeah.
Does your API HFI says I'm 67?
Right? It says 67 right now? That's a good one. Sorry, I didn't repeat the question. Sorry. He said, why in your API or the API say that I'm 77, right? It's because you're looking old. So how many of you are familiar with VirusTotal? Yeah, go ahead. Here you go. Which is a free service. There's a pay service as well for VirusTotal. And I think VirusTotal is owned by, I think it's owned by a big company now. Anyway. So most of you, I guess most of you leverage VirusTotal by copy an IOC and paste the IOC within the web platform, right? Most of you are probably doing this. But there's also an API for VirusTotal, which is cool. And here's the different use case that can be leveraged with VirusTotal, let's say. Getting the URL, file, domain, IP reputation for better enrichment. You can submit a URL and a file to be analyzed as well. Okay? Those two functionality, I would say most of the other vendor out there charge you for this, including Cisco. Okay? So we charge you for this. But here's the free service. If you want to test it, use it, and if it makes sense for you, go for it, right? The last use case over here that I really like is to contribute to the community. Right? Make sure to add additional comment. Right? There's someone that is telling you that that URL is a phishing email, it's part of a phishing whatever campaign. And if you see this as well, and say, yes, I see it as well. Right? So add additional comment. Maybe you have a screenshot from that email and stuff like that, so on and so forth. Make sense? How do you do this? It's fairly easy. So within your account, there's a section where you can generate your API key, copy your API key, and then leverage any tool that you want to take advantage of VirusTotal, right? Of course, if you do own a commercial version of an XDR platform, it's typically built into it. Otherwise, there's many other ways to test it and implement it into your own framework, let's say, right? So how many of you are familiar with Postman? Nice. So here's the example of Postman, which is not used, typically it's not used for a production environment, right? It's for testing. But essentially, here's what you will do. It's you test the different API through Postman, and then you will replicate what the Postman is doing in terms of requests into your own script. Right? Let's say you are building a script with Python or PowerShell or whatever other scripting tool as well. You will replicate this. So here's the request. Give me, Mr. VirusTotal, the reports for that specific hash. Right? What is a hash? Anyone know what is a hash? Come on. What's a hash? SHA-256, right? Of a file. It's a fingerprint of a file. So here's the hash. Give me, Mr. VirusTotal, the result for that hash. And here's the result that come in JSON format, right? So most of you that are doing coding, I guess, do understand what JSON is. Fairly easy. It's a result that you can parse and get the information that's mattered to you and ditch all the other rest. And use that information as you want, okay? The good thing about VirusTotal, it gives you multiple different results. It will give you for, let's say, different type of antivirus, EDR, and stuff like that. It will give you all the different results for all these different EDR. So the other function as well, or use case is comments or contribute to the community itself. So it's fairly easy as well. So you can definitely implement this within your framework of XDR by saying that I want to send back when I saw that coming into my infrastructure, let's say, and stuff like that. Add a comment, and that's about it. How many of you are familiar with Malware Bazaar? Yeah, that's nice. Oh, am I going to be able to go up there? Yeah, here we go. So Malware Bazaar, which I really, really like. It's a little bit more underground than VirusTotal, I guess. I think it's not owned by any big organization. And it's under the abuse.ch umbrella, let's say. Some of you may know as well that organization. So you can definitely, through the web, you can search for a hash, for a URL, and other IOC as well. The cool thing about it, there is a signature identify if it's belonged to or it's been tied to a specific campaign, a family of malware, and so on and so forth. There's tag as well, and you can even download the malware piece, okay, which could be bad, but anyway. So let's look at the use case itself for Malware Bazaar. Again, getting the file intel, right? Is there any malware signature or tag for better enrichment? Threat hunting. Give me, for example, give me all the last files that are tied to a rat, or any signature that we want to look that could be bad for my organization as well and stuff like that. Submit a file as a sandbox, a particular sandbox, and contribute to the community again. So if we look at Postman, get me the last 10 the last 10 malware. You can definitely see things that could matters to you while you're doing an investigation. When the first, what is the first time we have saw that file within the community, the last time as well, the file type, and all the tags that are associated to it. We can also use this as a threat hunting tool, let's say, or to add enrich as well information while we're doing a threat hunting. So, for example, give me all the different files that are associated with the tag rat. All right? And then it's just a matter of scanning all the infrastructure, see if that file could be in your infrastructure. So how many of you still look at phone numbers? Typically, what type of technology the phishing or the social engineering type of attack are using? Phone, right? So we better have a tool as well to enrich information that we can gather automatically on phone number, right? There is phone number and signature and email. There is many other places as well where we may want to know if a phone number is valid or not, and if it's tied to a malicious activity. Okay, so there's a service called NemVerify, but there's a million of other as well. Okay, so this one do offer a free API services that give you the ability to identify multiple different things about a phone number. Of course, the use case again, you look at an email, it's malicious. Instead of having to copy and paste the phone number in Google and see if it's valid, then you can use a service like this to add that information right away into your ticket, right, or investigation ticket. Again, pretty easy to get your API key. Yeah, question here. I like question. Or is it a question or a comment? Wait. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, it just doesn't work. Yeah, of course. Or it's going to say that the phone number is not valid. The service will say phone number not valid. So you can increase, in that case, you can increase the risk of your ticket. Say, oh, there's a phone number not valid within the email or the incident I'm looking at, right? Good question. So how do we do this through a Postman? Just a regular get with the phone number, and then we get the information about that phone number right away, right? And then we can parse all the information and use it as we want within our investigation. How many of you are familiar with Nmap? I guess a lot of you, right? Who wants a pig? There you go. I have plenty of pigs, so don't worry about that. So there's a cool service that I have found a couple of months ago, which is nmap.online. All right? For those of you who are not familiar with Nmap, it's a cool tool that allows you to scan open ports, right, on a machine. So what's nmap.online offer you? It's to do this on behalf of you, right, from the web. So they probably have tons and tons of different services across the world, and then through API, you can ask them to scan a public IP, right, and get the result, which is nice. Question, comments? No? Okay. So is there any use case that we can tie to this? Of course. There's a couple of use cases. The one that I really like, it's to be able to add context about a public IP that is targeting you. Okay? Let's say you do have multiple security incidents that are related to the same public IP. Then you can use that type of service to add automatically to your incident ticket the result of the port scan of that public IP. Okay? Why does that matter? Then you can identify maybe that there's some open ports that may be associated with a CNC, let's say, okay, or other malicious activity as well. Yep.
Just to clarify, are you saying that
Oop.
tool is basically Nmap in the browser?
So the question is, I'm going to repeat the question. So the question is that tool Nmap in a browser? Yes. So you can go to nmap.online right now and scan any public IP through the browser. And it will not be initiated from your current public IP. It will be initiated from their service public IP. You get the difference, right? So you're not going to be responsible for that scanning. Don't abuse it. Okay? And the beauty is you can automate this as well through API, which is cool, right? So you can ask to scan any IP. Of course, for those of you who are familiar with Nmap, it could take anything from a couple of seconds to a couple of minutes, right, to get the result. So the first request you ask, can you hear me well? Yeah, okay. You ask the service to scan the IP. It gives you, I think it's a scan ID. Then you get the scan ID and you do another request to get the result. And then you get the result in a JSON format, of course. Yeah. Do you have one? Not yet?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. What's the advantage or disadvantage to the API being online? Because
Yeah. I will give you an example. Okay. The company that I'm working. Wait. Repeat the question. So the gentleman here was asking, what's the advantage of having an external service to scan the public IP on behalf of you, right? Instead of scanning it from yourself, I guess, right?
yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to give you,
Like an outside.
yeah, I'm going to give you an example here. Of course, this is to scan a public IP, not an internal IP. That's a little bit different, right? So I'm going to give you an example here, short example. I work for a company, and I'm building workflow and playbook, okay? And I had the idea to create a port scan within our own XDR platform, which is hosted in the cloud. And to test the solution, I was port scanning 1.1.1.1, okay? And a couple of minutes later on, I got a call from someone from security at my organization saying, what the hell are you doing? Okay? 1.1.1 is owned by one of our competitors. So I said, okay, yes, mister, I'm going to stop what I'm doing, and I'm going to delete that workflow. And then I did some research, and then I found out nmap.online. Right? Make sense? Perfect. Yeah?
Do you know who owns nmap.online, or we scan our own infrastructure, or are we just showing them all the
So the question is, do you know who owns nmap.online? No, I don't. Neither most of people, I guess, as well. Is that service? That's a good question. Is that service used for good or bad? I don't know. Right? It's probably used for bad as well.
Well, I think that's sort of like use. It's just like you're using it, so whatever you're typing in there could be going to, you know.
Oh, but that's a good point as well. So the question is, whatever you're tapping in or you're searching for, is it public? Yes, it is. So if you're searching for a specific IP and scanning for a specific IP, it will be report on their web page. Okay? The result will be public. So it can be used later on by someone else with bad intention. Right? But I think you can pay for an extra fee and get those scanned private. Anyway, I'm just telling here. MAC address. The last talk was pretty cool. It's almost like get rid of the MAC address, right? But MAC address is still used a lot in our infrastructure wherever you go. And there's multiple different reasons why you want to look at the vendor behind that MAC address while you're doing an investigation. Remember, investigation could be not only on external threat, it could be from an internal threat as well, right? And when it's from an internal threat, most of the time you do have access to a MAC address as well that is tied to internal IP. So what are the different use cases here? You may want to double check. All right? Typically, it's a printer that is tied to that MAC address. Is it still a MAC address that is owned? Is it a MAC address that is owned by another vendor? It may be a Mac or whatever other type of devices as well. It doesn't make sense. Identify rogue devices as well, right? Or you may also want to maybe scan all your MAC address in your switches in AP, right? And say, I'm not supposed to have any iPhone. Why do I have a MAC address that is linked to an iPhone in my infrastructure, right? And so on and so forth. Again, Postman, these are just for reference, but it's quite easy to look at. MAC address, there's not even an authentication mechanism or a key for that. So this one is pretty cool as well. IP table, how many of you are familiar with IP table? I guess some of you, right? Gentleman of the back there. Whoop. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I hit someone on the way. IP table is pretty cool. For those of you who are not familiar with IP table, it's kind of a host firewall for Linux, base / whatever OS. So there's someone or a group, whatever, that has created a tool that allows you through API to add an IP to be blocked on IP table. Okay, so now we are in the response phase, right? While the other services were more into the investigation and enrichment phase, now we are more into the response phase here. Is it scalable? No, it's not, right? Remember, these are free services, free tools, or whatever that you can use as a proof of concept or whatever other reason as well. If you're cheap, you don't have money, or so on and so forth, you can leverage that for sure, right? And on top of that, there's some other mistake that they're doing within that script that I've been looking at. They do not authenticate requests. So if you're a bad actor and you have compromised their infrastructure, you can literally add, block, remove any IP within on their server, right? You can totally isolate their server. Block a server, isolate a server as well. This could be useful and when you're under attack, let's say. The way it's built, you have to compile, install a small tool on each individual server, of course, in that case. And then it's just a matter of adding an IP to the IP table, and that's it. And that IP will be blocked after that. Make sense? I reach out the end of my presentation, but I do want to talk about one more thing. That I have not created any slide for it because I want to keep this for later on. But ChatGPT, IE in general is pretty cool. One of the other use cases as well that I have imagined and I want to be able to build as well is to take any phishing email, let's say, and start a conversation with the bad actor. Right? Using IE, using ChatGPT API, or whatever other intelligent artificial API as well. So I can gather more information about threat actor in general. Right? That will be cool. But again, I think my talk was more on, let's give you some tools, let's give you some idea as well of stuff that you can start on your own to start your journey on adding additional free services to your XDR strategy, let's say. Think outside of the box. Any comments, question? So the comment was, is this a phishing attempt? No. Maybe. Yeah, maybe, of course, maybe. Thank you very much, and see you next year.